Steam is an infinite goldmine for gamers. There are tons of hidden gems and some truly outstanding classics. However, it is also becoming quite notorious for a forever growing pile of slop titles. Games abandoned by their developers who still charge full price for the privilege of playing, even though some of these titles are essentially unplayable. And the majority of these games, unsurprisingly, fall under the MMO genre. So I took it upon myself to go out and buy some of these titles and see if they actually have any redeeming features about them. My credit card took quite the beating, so if you want to help support my channel, for the love of God, please leave a like on this video. Anyway, that's enough yapping from me. Let's take a look at our first abandoned game. Up until a week ago, I hadn't a clue what Starbase even was. And then out of nowhere, I got a comment telling me I should check it out. It's a unique space MMO which sadly hasn't been worked on in over a year. And as someone who enjoys playing dead games, how could I resist? It was literally the reason for making this whole video. So at a cost of roughly $34 US, I decided to check it out. It's worth pointing out that Steam does have a pretty generous refund policy. If you are unhappy with the game within the first 2 hours, you can refund it with no questions asked. Which I think is fair given the fact that this game in itself probably shouldn't be full price if it hasn't had an update in over a year. So will I be refunding, or will this be a keeper? Well, it loaded, which was a good start, and apparently the last server maintenance was 2 months ago. So that's a good sign, right? We'll just ignore it's been 15 months since the update before that. At first glance, it reminded me of those paintings, which is like an optical illusion with the stairs going like pretty much anywhere and everywhere. It didn't take me long to get used to the controls, they're pretty straightforward, and there was even an option for a third-person camera. Oh my god guys, I'm a clanker. Wait, can I say that?
Clanker is our word.
Not to get too off track, but the next part of the tutorial was telling me to go get a job. Maybe that's why the game died, because it was too real. Once I figured out the camera controls, I headed over to the demolition area to do my very first job. The game is called Starbase, and its main focus is this, Starbase. I can imagine back in the day when this game was popular, if it was ever popular, this would be quite the player hub. But in its current form, it was lonely, desolate, and felt more like a space horror, given the fact that I was on my lonesome and going to work. I'd reached my destination, and my task at hand was to pick up the buzzsaw using P, and then cut up the ship in front of me into smaller chunks. Cue montage with industrial music. I don't know what it is about deconstructing a huge steel rig using a buzzsaw, but it was fun. It made me feel extra masculine out of nowhere. I could just imagine after a hard day's work of cutting up a big rig, I'd go home, you know, the clanker wife would have some dinner ready on the table, I'd be like drinking a few cans of oil, then I'd like watch the TV, and she'd be like, you don't pay attention to me anymore, and I'd be like, look, I'm trying to relax, woman, leave me alone. And she'd be like, you're just constantly angry. And I'd be like, no, I'm not angry, I'm just trying to relax, leave me alone. And she would like start screaming at me. I'd be like, just leave me alone, get out of here. And then, yeah, proper roleplay, love it. Yeah. Just me? Next up, I was given the job of being a miner. Once again, not that type. I'm talking about the ones who smash rocks in. Well, I was given a pickaxe and then directed to smash up some asteroids. Nothing too complex, just all part of the tutorial, I guess. They had me smash up 10 asteroids, which, to be honest, felt a bit excessive. Like, I don't really need to sit here and do 10 to understand how the mechanics work, but they made me do 10. I then got given a new objective to go to the repair job site. Hopefully, this will be a little bit more exciting than the last job. And guess what? It wasn't. It was kind of mundane and boring, but I could see why they need to teach you this stuff. And by the end of it, it felt like a lesson from the Karate Kid, because the ship I was repairing was my ship. What really saddens me is that I don't know how many of you viewers out there will actually get that reference. Anyway, it was finally time to go grab my spaceship and take it for a little spin. Okay, just select the ship, push the button, and where the fuck is it? Where's my ship? Is the game really that fucking broken and busted? Oh my god. Oh, it's above me. I'm not sure why my ship was like 20 feet in the air. I had to use my jetpack to get to it. Maybe it's an indication as to how big ships can get in this game. But either way, I jumped aboard and I was ready to blast off. Now, it is worth noting, there are some hotkeys you can press, so you can like tilt, twirl, and all that other jazz. But they also give you the controls directly in front of you, which I think just confused the situation, if I'm being honest. One silver lining was that no one got to see me make a complete arse of myself trying to take off, because, well, there was no one on the server. Eventually, though, I did get the hang of it. So off I went on a great big ruddy space adventure to... I'm not even too sure where I was going. Yeah, probably should have avoided that. One thing that really did stand out was the fact that there seemed to be a lot of player ships about. I don't know if these were abandoned or what, but I mean, they weren't moving, so I assume people logged out and their ships just stayed in place, which got really eerie after a while because, my god, there was a lot of abandoned ships. What you see in front of me is the space station that I launched from, and to the right of me are a whole bunch of other space stations which look to be duplications of the one I just come from. So, what I don't understand is why are there so many space stations which look the same? Are these like different spawn points perhaps? I'd eventually go check it out, but for now I had to go and mine an asteroid in the asteroid belt. So, that should be pretty exciting. I guess the one thing that they never teach you about space travel is that it takes a fucking age. With potentially only 2 hours to play, spending half hour to get to an asteroid in the first bit of the tutorial just didn't seem like a good use of time. But maybe that was their tactic. Maybe they don't want people to refund and they drag them along this long ass tutorial in order to stop them from doing so. Or it's just badly designed. Could go either way. I was slowly getting closer to one of these ships that had been abandoned, and I thought I'll take my chances here and see if I can actually board it. Honestly, with nothing else going on, it seemed like a really good idea. There was just one slight flaw to my plan. Apparently, I don't know how to park a spaceship. Too embarrassed to go back and try again, I carried on to my destination. I even put a message in area chat in hope that someone out there was alive. They weren't. I found a whole bunch of abandoned ships, so I thought this would be a good time to try again and board a ship. So I jumped out and started jetpacking my way towards it. As I got closer to the ship, I noticed it had a striking resemblance to my ship, so I assumed this was another player's abandoned ship. Oh, I also might have forgot to put the handbrake on my spaceship, so it started like driving off without me, which sent me into a panic and I quickly got back on board it. Believe me, when it comes to space travel, you really do learn from your mistakes. Oh wow, look, I can explore so much. Leave the ship in hyperspace. I managed to reverse my ship and actually put the handbrake on this time. And after doing a little bit of probing, there was literally nothing I could like steal from the ship. Nothing I could salvage. Which meant that all these other spaceships I could see from these other players were literally just dead assets floating in space. Empty-handed, I returned to my ship and I did eventually find an asteroid which I could mine. I was now 30 minutes into this game, and from what I could tell, the gameplay loop itself seemed a bit stale and long-winded. I managed to mine 2 whole asteroids before my ship was full up, and I had to return back to the Starbase. In my opinion, a tutorial should hold your hand and show you the basics of a game and be somewhat interesting and fun so that you carry on playing after you finish the tutorial. Now, if I was a betting man, I would say that a majority of these abandoned player ships were probably players doing the tutorial who got bored and gave up on their way to mine an asteroid or take it back to the space station. Because there's nothing remotely engaging about what I'm doing right now. This isn't fun to play. And the crazy thing is, the devs have the stats in front of them and must have seen people quit within like the first couple of hours, and they never acted on it. And worse than that, someone probably play tested this tutorial and decided this was good. This is good gameplay. Let's keep this in, alright? This is what's going to sell millions of copies. After a long and tedious journey, I made it back to the space station where I could unload my resources, only to be told I didn't have enough to upgrade my ship. So I should get back out there and mine another asteroid.
Fuck.
Instead of mining for more resources, I opted to go exploring instead. There were some structures close to the planet which looked somewhat interesting, and most importantly, there wasn't a trail of abandoned ships on the run up to them. It was another long and tedious journey over to the structures, but I found a way to entertain myself by leaving the thrusters on and just climbing out my ship. As I got closer to the structure, some abandoned ships did start to appear. At this point, I kinda conceded the fact that I wouldn't meet another player whilst playing this game. But the main question still remained, which was, where the fuck am I? After a 5-star landing, I went inside this building and I was met with what could only be described as a spaceship showroom. There was a whole heap load of ships that you could buy or craft, and the best thing was there was an option to test drive. And something that had occurred to me was that maybe my starting out ship was just slow and it wasn't the game's fault. So I figured if I could test drive a few ships, maybe it'll give me a better indication as to why the game felt so slow. Was it because I was a noob, or was it just bad development? The ship itself did feel a lot smoother, more maneuverable, and definitely less clunky. As to whether it's quicker though, I'd have to properly test it. So I set course to the main planet because this seemed like a good test of speed.
6.5 hours later.
It just felt like I wasn't moving, so I decided to try and find a bigger ship to test drive. So this one looked more fancy and had a whopping cost of 2.8 million, and for that price I expected it to go like shit off a shovel. What I did find pretty cool was that all the interiors were different from one another, so at least they had that going for them. But I don't know where it is, but all the ships just seemed really slow. As fun as it was to go nowhere fast, time was running out. So I opted to hop back into my starter ship and headed back to the closest starbase. When eventually, something worse than death happened to me. Now, if anyone here is a fan of Star Wars, you might remember The Last Jedi was quite controversial for a particular reason. And that is the fact that the big galactic cruiser was running out of fuel. It's not an uncommon concept, spaceships require fuel to move in space. It's just one of those things you don't think about, like in how every apocalypse movie they find fuel in old cars, yet fuel expires after 6 months. Despite the warning, my vessel was still going towards the space station, so I thought I might make it. And then it just stopped dead. Oh no! I was stranded. There was nothing I could do. But it didn't seem too far away. Maybe I could jetpack over there, grab some fuel and jetpack back. But unfortunately, my jetpack was a lot slower than my spaceship, and well, I knew how long it took to get to the space station, and that I don't want to even think about how long it would take me to jetpack over there, even though it looked so close. Luckily though, I had spot sign on the menu which I thought might come in handy. And just like that, I was back at the beginning where I first started my journey. Except now I don't have a spaceship, I'd have to pay a lot of credits to tow it back, and I certainly didn't feel like mining to get more money.
I've got nothing left.
What a great gaming experience. At this point, I felt like the game was giving me a very easy decision here as to whether I should keep it or refund it. But to be fair to it, I went and checked the forums to see if I'd maybe missed something, maybe something else was going on. Surprisingly, the discussion page had some recent updates. Players asking about the game or if there would be anything new being added. And when reading some of the comments, I was surprised to actually see a lone dev replying to some of these questions. But despite the positivity of a dev replying, he didn't have a great message to relay, which is basically funding was tight, people had gone on to work on other projects, and he didn't say it, but he might as well have. This game is dead. What started off as a sci-fi MMO with a lot of potential is now just another victim of the genre. I mean, you know it's bad when Wicked Wiz is doing videos about your game. This game isn't coming back. It's insulting that there's even a price tag on this product, and quite frankly, I was happy to refund it. On to the next one. The name alone, Hide and Holdout H2O, was enough for me to be dubious, but I still persevered on. It was indeed a massively multiplayer online game, according to the tags, and had been in early access now for 9 years. So about the same as Ashes of Creation. Except this game had a reasonable price tag and wasn't likely a scam. I didn't do any prior research to playing this game other than quickly type it into YouTube just to see what came up, and to my surprise there were some popular videos on this game back in the day. So for $18 I figured it was at least worth the risk. Worst case scenario, it'll be another 2-hour refund job. I mean, I would never do that. It was pretty straightforward to install, and surprisingly there was only one achievement that I could unlock. When clicking launch it did seem a bit janky and I did for a slight moment get worried. But it did eventually load, I just needed to adjust the display settings. For some reason it loaded up as if I was using an iPhone, so I had to play around the settings just a little bit, and eventually I was ready to go. Being welcome to a 9-year-old alpha definitely set some standards in my head, and the only server I could join was Salty Balls PvE, which had 0 players. My expectations were at an all-time low. It definitely looked like it was graphically challenged. I ran around for a bit just to get my bearings and to get used to the controls. It was your standard WASD movement, so no real surprises or innovation there. I was a bit annoyed about the graphics because in the trailers it looked a lot better than what I was currently seeing, so I did try and play around the settings, but this is as best as I could get it. Being a survival game, I got to work gathering, and it was very immersive. Apparently this whole time I had a boat on my persons, so I got that out and jumped straight on board. I didn't realise I had the inventory space of a woman's handbag. With a few cranks my boat was ready to go, and we were now sailing the ocean? I couldn't help but think that this was certainly what 9 years of early access gets you. I immersed myself in the sights and sounds and just let the ambience take over. I eventually discovered this derelict structure, which I decided to get off my boat and explore. Eventually. It seemed very much like an empty asset, and from what I could tell, there's no other NPCs to interact with. No wild pigs, no wild humans, just me, myself, and I. The crafting menu seemed to be quite extensive, so maybe that's where this game truly shines. I mean, there's no way all these big YouTubers played this game just for, you know, the meme, content, clicks and views. Who would honestly do that? I did try to gather some wood, but apparently cutting down trees isn't what you do in this game. Instead, what you have to do is find logs floating on the ocean, and then you cut those down. Once again, immersion. When I first looked at this game, I thought it was going to be inspired by Waterworld, so it'd be like mainly floating structures, but when looking at the map, is more of a series of small islands. Oh look, another video game with a political message. Look at all this floating plastic in the water. Best clean it up, I guess. Jeez. When did this game turn so woke? I drove around with no real goal, no real objective. I just wanted to see what the game had to offer, and quite frankly, it was a lot of copy-pasted assets just dropped in the ocean. Thinking about it, 9 years ago, this sort of game would probably still be considered pretty shit, so yeah, not much has changed. The oil rig was cordoned off so you couldn't actually build on it, and the only resource I could find was fuel, and I'm assuming that it's a valuable resource, hence why people can't build here. Maybe they want people to fight over this area. It was now night time, which meant I had to turn on my torch. Yep, that made all the difference. I was exploring the water when all of a sudden I took damage. I hadn't a clue what caused it, and then out of nowhere it happened again. This time I caught a glimpse of a shark. I didn't realise they were so stealthy that they made zero sounds whatsoever when they take a chunk out of your body. I managed to get out of the water just in time, and it truly made me reflect on how deadly sharks are, the silent killers. I decided to craft a weapon in case the beady-eyed bitey prick came back. So I made a spear out of all the odds and sods I'd collected. I eventually set up a little camp so I could craft other bits and bobs. I crafted a few more bits, and then once I was bored, I went exploring a bit more. I couldn't quite wrap my head around the fact that this was a PvE only server. Like, what were you actually supposed to do with your time? I mean, the only threat that there is are sharks in the water, and other than that, I mean, sun exposure? I mean, I don't know. There was only one more task I could think of to do, and that was of course fishing. And even that was very lackluster and disappointing. All the recent reviews for this game pretty much echoed my sentiment, which is it's a dead game and they probably shouldn't be charging people to play this. However, there's always that one lunatic, for whatever reason, decided this was the best game they'd ever played.
You sure about that? You sure about that?
The forums, however, seemed a bit more positive, with the dev of the game even saying that they were working on a remake and building it from the ground up, so don't despair because something new is coming. And that comment is from all the way back in 2021, so keep hoping guys, never give up. Next up is another early access MMO, which is the Yellow King, a self-proclaimed dark horror MMO inspired by H.P. Lovecraft. It has dungeons, raids, guilds, PvP, leaderboards, all the stuff you could possibly want from an MMORPG. So, let's begin. It's always a positive start when there's a really long load screen between the actual name of the developer and the actual start menu. So first up, I had to register my account, and as you can see from the very first interaction, it is indeed using the Unity engine, which I'm not against because I've played quite a lot of Unity engine games, some of which have been really good and some of them not so much. I created my account and logged in, and it just threw me straight in. No cutscenes, no nothing, just pure gaming. Graphically, I like the looks, but the controls were hella janky. It was WASD to turn and move, which just made it awkward, and the mouse didn't control the camera whatsoever. I did notice that someone had spoken in area chat,
Oh, hi, Mark.
which confirms they've at least made $20 from making this game. I put the mandatory hello in chat just to see if anyone would reply.
Hello, how are you?
But I think I had more chance of winning the lottery than meeting another player on this game. The tutorial told me to enter a solo dungeon, so I did just that. I was met with a big portal which actually allowed me to change the difficulty of the game to hardcore, but I don't want to get ahead of myself. Let's just see if the game works before I start cranking up the difficulty. I went to break a weapon rack which actually revealed a secret shop. In the shop there were some amulets I could buy and they all had different stats to them, which is surely a good sign, right, because they put some thought into how gearing would work in this game. I exited through the gift shop and ended up in a big courtyard. I assumed I had to kill these people in front of me, otherwise this is going to be very awkward. The controls are pretty basic: left click to light attack, right click to do a charged attack. You can also throw your weapon by clicking in the middle mouse button. Of course, being the expert gamer that I am, I just spammed light attack. Eventually, everything died, I leveled up, and I even found some gear. As for my first impressions, this felt like more of a dungeon crawler roguelike than it ever did a MMORPG. Wait a minute, you don't think they labelled it a MMO just so people would download it, do you? As for the dark horror elements, being in Unity engine really did limit its potential. I mean, there were these scary mimic chests, I guess. I mean, ooh, spooky. As I progressed through the dungeon, the enemies did kind of get slightly more difficult, nothing too strenuous. And as for the combat, well, it felt more monotone than my voice. And trust me, I know, I read your comments. At one point I thought I'd mix it up a bit and try and use a crossbow, and it was pretty janky. And that was the last time I used a crossbow. The claws on the other hand were just perfection. The charge attack looked amazing. Despite the animation looking like me telling my Jesus in the microwave joke, it was quite effective. But just also very stupid looking. I then made it to a boss room which had a boss in it. After breaking the statue, the room was filled with snakes. I think the mechanics were I had to kill the snakes first and then kill the guy who's teleporting around the room. The only issue was he was a lot quicker at teleporting than I was at hitting him. I think at this stage I was supposed to stand still and wait for him to come to me, but instead my smooth brain made me chase him around like a plastic bag in the wind.
You know, Dave, sometimes I feel like a plastic bag
drifting through the wind,
wanting to start the game.
But I was more determined than a fat kid at an all-you-can-eat buffet, and eventually I smited him. And what did I get for that time and effort? A big ruddy chest, and inside, a really bad shield. I did some more exploring of the dungeon, eventually arrived at another boss fight, who admittedly nearly got the better of me, but I did manage to slay him, and my reward was once again another chest, which had another lackluster reward. This was literally how it left me feeling. And just to top it off, I lost the rest of the footage. So, yeah. So a couple days later, I loaded the game up again just to recapture what I'd done before. And to my surprise, if you have a look in the area chat, you can see my message is still there. And also the guy before that, which just goes to show how dead this game really is. So I decided to add another message, and just to show you what you missed out on from the footage which sadly didn't get captured, there is a overland part to this game. And the overland just acts as a go-between dungeons. There's not really much to do in these overland areas, and there are even cities that you can visit, but they're essentially placeholders. They don't actually do anything of use. There's the odd merchant, but there's nothing else to do. Despite the claims of everything this game is supposed to have, it's just a shell of a title, it's a concept, it's an idea. It's there to showcase what they want to do, but they clearly don't have the ability to do anything. They made a basic dungeon crawler, called it early access, put it on Steam, and just hoped that some idiot like myself would come along and buy it. So what does the community page say? While the devs behind the game went on to blame COVID for the lack of progress, stating that they had offices all over the world and due to the shutdown of COVID, the progress of the game got halted, and they were willing to offer refunds. And of course, like every other dead MMO mentioned today, they still have hopes to work on the title and improve it.
Son of a bitch, this is a scam, okay? This is a scam.
It's worth noting though, this post was back in 2023, and people have been labelling this game dead since 2021. They also went on to release a new game in 2023, which is also a MMO, which actually got an update a few days ago. Let's call it what it is, which is they got bored of the last project, moved on to a new one, which was instantly more successful, so they're going to carry on with that instead. And they'll keep the old game up and running because there's a small chance that another idiot like myself will come along and buy it, and they'll make a very small amount of profit. To no one's surprise, these aren't the only 3 abandoned MMOs I found on Steam. I found quite a few others, and one of them I even got past the refund stage because I was having that much fun with it. It is, however, somewhat of a depressing subject, and when I've covered off dead MMOs in the past, they don't always do too well. So if you do want to see a part 2, then I'm going to leave it up to you guys. If you can get this video to 2,069 likes, I will indeed embark on a second adventure. And spoiler alert, I'm pretty sure one of these is a crypto miner or might have stolen my bank details. And on that bombshell, I'm going to end the video there. If you do want to help me in my further endeavours into the world of abandoned Steam games, then by all means feel free to become a YouTube or Patreon member. This also comes with secret access in the Discord and of course previews of the projects I'm working on. Anywho, thanks for watching and I'll see you in the next one. Bye for now.